Hi, I'm Constantine or Constantine, depending on which of the millions of parallel Earths you currently reside on. And this is going to be a reaction video to the amazing speech that Javier Milei gave at the World Economic Forum recently.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's for me a great honor to welcome Javier Milei. As you know, he's the freely elected president of Argentina, and it's actually your first trip to a foreign country after you have been elected. First, congratulations for your election, and congratulations also to your sister, who managed your election campaign. I think you, sometimes people would say with more radical methods, but you introduce a new spirit to Argentina, making Argentina much more related to free enterprise, to entrepreneurial activities, also to bring Argentina back to the rule of law. So we have a very extraordinary person among us today, and of course we are all eager to listen to you, and again a very cordial welcome to the World Economic Forum.
This is unusually cordial, this welcome from Mr. Klaus Schwab. He needs a reaction video in itself, just the way he was unexpectedly positive.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Hoy estoy acá
Today I'm here
para decirles que Occidente
to tell you
está en
that the
peligro.
Western world is in danger.
Está en peligro porque
And it
aquellos que
is
supuestamente deben
endangered
defender
because
los valores
those who
de
are
Occidente
supposed to have to
se
defend the
encuentran
values of the
cooptados
West
por una visión del
are
mundo
co-opted by
inexorablemente
a
conduce al
vision of the world that
en
inexorably
consecuencia
leads to
a la
socialism
pobreza.
and thereby to poverty.
Lamentablemente,
Unfortunately,
en las últimas décadas,
in recent decades,
motivados por algunos deseos
motivated
interesantes de
by
querer
some
ayudar al
well-meaning
prójimo y otros por el deseo de
individuals
pertenecer a una
willing
casta
to help
privilegiada,
others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why.
Right, by the way, I have seen it up to this point. I think I watched about 5 minutes. I went about 5 minutes in. So it's self-explanatory. You know, this does not, what he has said thus far does not really need any further explanation, right? Further elucidation. It's simple. Argentina, like you said, they adopted the capitalistic model in 1860, I believe he said, and it propelled them within a generation or two, 30, 40 years, to one of the top spots. And then they adopted the socialist models about 100 years ago, and he said it himself. I don't need to repeat what he said there, so let's see. Let's continue. I'm on YouTube.
free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only
So for those who don't, there won't be many who don't know, but just in case some people don't know the reference with the hockey stick, it's like a graph going like this, almost level, and then suddenly shooting up, almost at a right angle, okay? Like crazy exponential growth, kind of like, you know, like a rags to riches type of thing, sudden boost, all right? That's what he's describing there. In world history, like all across the planet, this explosive growth happened in the period he's saying.
exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years we could double the world's per capita GDP.
But of course, and I think he touched upon that soon, because I have seen about a minute or so after this, and then I stopped watching it earlier. So the communists / socialists will say, oh, but that's parasitic. Okay, that's too much growth. It's like a cancer. Okay, like the capitalistic model. Okay, so he's presenting it as a positive thing. He's saying, oh, look, all this growth. You see, the socialist / communist doesn't see it as a positive thing. Therein lies the problem. That's where the conflict comes in, you know, with the people who are right and the people who are blatantly wrong, and they have the the kill count to prove it, which is to say the communist faction is wrong. I mean, it's interesting that I mean, I've mentioned this many times on many times on Facebook posts and so on. Like, other people have said it too. Like, and it's true, because words are a magical thing. You know, the intuition. You know, life basically gives us signs and synchronicities through the way certain words have come about. Okay. The political right. You know, it's spelled exactly the same as the word that also happens to mean correct. Okay. So this is, to me, and to many other people who are red-pilled on such matters, it's the universe blatantly telling us, saying, look, the political right is the correct ideology, okay, so correct, or the more correct of the two, the more correct way of seeing things, because, and we've seen it, we've got the proof. I mean, I know there's a lot of people, like in the conspiracist, anarchist scene where they think, oh, all government is slavery and stuff. This guy's a libertarian, by the way. It's the first libertarian ever that's been voted in history, anywhere. So I'm much more of a libertarian mind. I mean, okay, technically, right libertarian, if that's a thing, you know, that's what I'd put myself in. It's the category that most accurately would describe me. I mean, if I ever, like if I became the president of Greece, I'll be like the Greek version of this guy. Okay, I'll be saying similar over the top things and doing crazy stunts like him and everything, right? So this is the kind of thing that you need in this world today. This guy's like the Trump of Argentina. He wants to make Argentina great again. But yeah, it's like the communists, the socialist side, the left side of the aisle, erroneously believes that the capitalistic model is inherently cancerous because the growth seems to be unstoppable. It kind of is true. That's why there is a left and right. That's why there's a yin and yang, okay? Because the right and the left are basically yang and yin, respectively, as expressed through the political lens. Okay, so you need two for anything to function in the universe. All right, both the polarities. So yes, if the yang polarity grows and expands unchecked, it could end up badly. Okay, but as far as workability and which one is more logical and practical and so on, it's definitely the right. Okay, this is where you get situations with Ronald Reagan's second term, with very well-known maps of America, where pretty much every state was red. Okay, everyone basically went along with him. During his first term, he convinced all the lefties that, hey, we need to vote for this guy if we want to make more money. All right. Money obviously is not meaning of life, but I'm in Greece now. I've been here for a little over 4 years. Moved back permanently again, and financially I'm much better off because it's kind of like my home base here, although I was not born here, technically. I'm a citizen of birth in Australia. I was born in the worst city in the entirety of human history, which is Melbourne, Australia. That's an empirical fact that I just said there. So I came to Greece as a teenager in my early teens, but I got more family here and everything, and just financially better off. My parents are here. They help me, all these other things, many more connections and family. So basically, when I was in Melbourne, in a phase which I call my Shawshank Redemption phase, because it's kind of like a spiritual, energetic jail was that period, the Odyssey. It was like this never-ending rat race, like pretty much working to eat so you can go to work the next day again. Okay, so you're eating in order to be able to live for another 24-hour period, so that you can work the following day in order to eat, in order to go to work again on Wednesday and on Thursday, and then to pay the rent and all this. And then, like the people who are listening, who are watching, who have gone through or are currently going through this kind of treadmill, rat race type of scenario, they all know, you all know that you would rather be, frustrated or depressed or whatever, or have your emotional problems that may or may not have a direct connection to money. You'd rather have those issues while being comfortable. Okay, so I'd rather be depressed and have relationship problems or whatever, or problems with my parents or whatever, but have money, rather than have the aforementioned problems but also be broke. I mean, it's just being broke just further adds to the ordinary, to the standard, the normal stressors of life that we all have. Okay, the things that come with the territory of being in this 3D, in this harsh realm, right? So not having money just makes things harder than they already are. That's all. It's not to say that, oh, this doesn't buy us happiness. No, that's vapid. That's stupid. Not stupid, but it's very nearsighted to think that it's just money. But yeah, like I'd rather be unhappy or depressed or frustrated or whatever with money, rather than have those issues and also be broke, because it just makes it worse. Okay, you could say, I mean, there was one argument, you could say, oh well, in some ways it's good to be busy, to be striving for something, to have a goal, because like there's also that thing where statistically it's true, like when people retire, they die if they got nothing to do, working for 40 years and then they retire, and then a couple of years later they just die because they're sitting on a chair all day on the porch for 2 years straight. You basically die of boredom. You die of not having any goals, because people need goals. Okay, it's not really the destination, it's the journey. Okay, because when you achieve something, then you're like, oh, was that all? Okay, I'm happy for a day. Okay, what's next now? Okay, you can't rest. You want to keep doing. You need a new mountain to climb, that type of thing. And especially if those of us who are more ambitious than average, we want even more. So, an argument could be made of the virtue of poverty and, hustling to make it on your own and become self-made and all that. I had that when I was in my 20s and stuff. When I was young, I tried to do all that. It's part of the reason I left Greece again after high school and went back to Melbourne. But the point is to actually make it. Okay, if you do become self-made and succeed in that way, that's good. But to be in that rat race forever, like to die like that, to never taste like the trappings of wealth, like to have a comfortable life where you can just, you get sick, you need to have an operation, you need to go to a good doctor, you need to get some expensive medicine. I mean, good food costs. Meat, red meat, good quality meat is always expensive. Seafood, all the good stuff, vitamins. Real estate, good places to live in, they're more expensive. Something that's more valuable costs more. And, when you say cost, it means money. Okay, it costs it costs units of money. All right, so it's not evil. Many people have misconstrued, have misinterpreted the Bible quote. It's the root of all evil. No, a lot of people know this, but some don't. Okay, so I'll say it just to help the people who have not figured this one out, who have not come across it before. The love of money is the root of all evil. Nobody said that money, period, is the root of all evil. The love of, and I've been explaining now for like 5 minutes that clearly it's not the end goal, just to be rich. So, I'm rich now. And then what? You're just sitting in this giant house, all this money. What are you going to do? You need more depth than that, obviously, to be happy, to be truly happy, to have meaning in your life. Clearly, you have to do what you love. That's the biggest part of it. You have to find your mission in life. You have to find the actual thing you were born to do, not just some job for the money. You got to love your job and get paid for it, but you don't do it for the money to begin with. Okay. So there's many factors involved, but material wealth, I mean, abundance, it's a good thing. It's never bad. Okay, it's only when you focus just on that to the exclusion of all else. Okay. And the communist types, the more you lean to the left, the more the mindset is oh, it's parasitic and capitalism is, takes advantage of people and it's oppression and blah, blah, blah. Like somebody told me, I had a conversation recently with a woman who turned out being a communist. And I'm like, look, I get it. Because she was saying I'm loving and I want equality. I'm like, okay, I understand that. So do I. I said I was more left leaning when I was younger. I didn't label it as such. I didn't really understand that that's what it was. But looking back, I'm like, oh, okay. If I was aware at the time, I probably would have classed myself as, I don't know, center left or something. I don't know. Like all this, the usual anti-racism, against the anti-bankster, all these things, anti-hierarchy, taking David Icke way too literally about his absolute hatred of hierarchy. Because he's a leftist, right? That's why he says that. So everybody, all the leftists, they hate hierarchy. They think money is evil. They think capitalism is just all about exploitation. The capitalist pig, slanderous term, all that. So this lady, her answer was, I said, I understand, but basically, I said it's simple. I don't want any more people to die. I mean, look at all the people, like, the proof is in the pudding. You can just Wikipedia it, and you can see it. Within 2 minutes, you can get the data. It's there. It's got the biggest kill count in history. All the communist states, all right? And her answer, I was shocked. I was shocked after the fact. At the time, I probably didn't show it, but then I thought about it. I thought, fuck, what did she say? Did she really say that? Her answer was, well, capitalism has killed more. Okay, so I had to see that live because I've heard online when I read about this stuff, in the culture wars, the political wars, that this is one of the things they say. Like the other classic trope, they say, oh, it wasn't like Stalin didn't do it right, all that stuff. But you think, is this is too cheesy? It's like everybody keeps repeating that's what they say. Did they really do this? Do they really believe / say this stuff? And I saw she did it. I saw that live. She said that to me. She said, well, capitalism has killed more. I didn't want to push it because I didn't want to put strains on that particular relationship at the time. I should have, knowing what happened later, but anyway. What you say to someone like that, what you should say to someone like that would be, okay, what do you mean? Give me the data. Where exactly has capitalism killed more people? It's BS. It's not even true, right? But it's interesting that that's a very recent real-life conversation I had with a person who actually said that. And she identified as a communist. Quite staunchly, actually. So that's very interesting that I had this experience quite recently. So it shows, that proved to me, lived experience, one-on-one, that the people who are on the far left do really believe that capitalism is the enemy of mankind. That's why they're so fiercely against it, and to us they just seem irrational. Newsflash, it's because they are. But of course, darkness or insanity or evil is the last one that's going to recognize what they are. Like, everyone else can see it, but they can't. Like, if someone's an a-hole, if someone's stupid, if someone's something, any negative thing you can think of, they're going to be the last one that are going to see it. Everyone else can, but they won't admit it. So you can't see it. So they can't see how wrong they are. All right? That's why this is happening. That's why this constant friction is happening between the left and the right. The right literally is right. It's correct. But the left can't see how wrong it is, so it's going to keep doing its thing. Okay?
This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after
Must be Klaus Schwab sabotage. Oh no.
Μήπως το παιδί σου βρίσκει την καθημερινή μελέτη βαρετή? Κάνε το διάβασμα παιχνίδι.
Because YouTube, Skynet knows I'm in a geographical
percent a year, so you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years.
As quite an important parenthesis here, as you can see all this coughing I've been doing, and in recent videos as well, it's been worse. Public servants announcement, ladies and gentlemen, COVID is real. This is why I'm coughing. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's a way longer story than that, but this is not that kind of video.
That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that
Yeah, like I said before. I mean, he's explaining it in his own way, but yeah. Basically, that's what they do. They're wrong. They're clearly wrong. Like they have the kill count that proves it. Period. The end.
Capitalism is evil because it's individualistic, and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes? Which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process. If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives, and the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from...
Right. So yeah, it's just an amazing thing. It's like, again, going back to that eternal theme, that eternal truism. It's so true. It's axiomatically true that well, it's my right, but this will be your right. Okay, so the right is yang, the left is yin. Okay, so it's this interplay, and yang. For those of you who who know a bit of metaphysics, yang is an upward thrust, it's growth, and it would be unchecked growth. It would just be unlimited growth, okay, unlimited expansion, if it's not restrained by the yin force, okay. And as men and women, as biological 3D expressions of these energies, we behave the same. Like this whole thing of men not wanting to get tied down because we want like unlimited freedom and stuff, and our sexuality is like that as well. Like we want to impregnate, like a man's mating strategy is numbers. It's like to impregnate as many as possible, whereas a woman just wants to nab one man and keep him forever, which, you know, usually that creates like a feeling of nausea in men generally, just that the thought of that. But to a woman, it's like she thinks that's the best thing ever, because that's like opposites. So in the politics, capitalism versus socialism, yin yang, right? It's the same thing. Like the yang, the right, the capitalistic model, the fiscal conservatism, that produces the wealth, okay? And the socialist element, the socialist faction, socialist side of the aisle, ideology, however you want to put it, socialist policies, governments, they take what the yang, what the right produces, all right? It's just how they're built. They don't understand the process of the wealth creation, like he's describing. I mean, this guy, I'm throwing metaphysics into it and everything, and my own understandings in general. I mean, he's a trained economist, so he's explaining it purely in economic terms there. But we're talking about the same thing. It's like a creative force and a force that absorbs, okay? And each is incapable of doing the things that the other one can do, okay? Because, like I said, give credit where credit is due. Like, if it was only capitalism, that it would become like a scenario of like a cancerous, it would be like a tumor, like this cancer that just non-stop growth, okay? Would it end up like, if it was unchecked, we'd just have one guy, the richest guy on earth, just ruling the planet, okay, and enslaving us all. Kind of like, you know, some of the dystopian scenarios we see, like in like the first Blade Runner, etc. You know, like what was it called? I don't remember what the corporation was called. Tyrell Corporation? I don't know. And it was like literally like its logo was a pyramid and whatever. So certainly you need the socialist element to keep the unchecked growth in unchecked growth in check. Okay, I used check twice there, but you know what I'm saying. but basically, like the conservative side, the capitalist model, that's like you create the wealth, you create the structures of society, everything, the whole infrastructure is based on that side. Okay, that's where it springs from. And all that the socialists know how to do is just take money, take the existing wealth that's been created by the right, but they don't know how to generate their own. All right, that's why if leftism goes unchecked for too long, it leads to collapse and poverty, and eventually extermination, like in the USSR, like in the worst case scenarios, like USSR and other places.
Offering better goods and services at a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster, and this is morally superior and just. Thanks to...
Like I said, the negative polarity, or the person who's wrong, clearly wrong, or whatever, or a bully, or unintelligent, or whatever they're doing, they're often the last to see it. They just don't see that they're wrong, because he's saying, how the hell can you, considering the data, and the data is not now, we've got for the past 100 years the data, at the very least, and it consistently, every year, year after year, it proves that what he and I are saying now is true. And yet there's always a faction that bitches about it, and it's like, no, we need to smash the capitalism. And this guy's exasperated. He's like, what? Why can't you see it? Why are you complaining about clearly the most workable system? Beats me. Nobody knows, pal. Stupid is stupid does. Forrest Gump said it best.
Free trade capitalism, it is to be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is richer, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed, and the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries, and poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lynch Jr., who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words,
it sounds like the best system we've come up with so far to me.
Capitalists, successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being. Ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom...
See, another thing, this whole, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm not an economist and I haven't read every book on these matters, but this whole, the right side, the correct side, the entire ideology seems to hinge on one thing, on private property. That is the cornerstone, okay? And what are the Marxists, what are the communists always yelling about? They want to abolish the right to property, okay? They want to get rid of the right to own property because they think it's oppressive for someone to have a house and to be able to rent it out to somebody, okay? That's how the whole thing started, with the proletariats complaining about the bourgeoisie. So, it's like everything. I'm just getting brain fog now because, partly because I'm still sick, but partly because this is so awesome what he's saying. It's just great. It's like my brain is malfunctioning because of the awesomeness, if you can believe it, if that's even a thing that can happen. I'm so overwhelmed. It's amazing.
Freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity. It is worth asking why I say that the West is endangered. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in their theoretical framework and others due to a greed for power, are undermining the foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the overwhelming empirical evidence, continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly, or without meaning to, ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism, and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model they fell in love with does not map reality, so they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model. On the pretext of a supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment, and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism for social cooperation where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be a market failure is if there is coercion. And the only one that is able to coerce generally is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. An example of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions, whose counterpart are the concentrated structures of the economy, we couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800 onwards, with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the president...
I've got to stop there. That is just, I know he mentioned it earlier as well in the video, but that's just extraordinary because it's the first time I've heard that data. That is incredible. 95% of the people were in poverty as opposed to 5% after the capitalist experiment began. That's just extraordinary. How can anyone with an IQ over 6 not see that this is the best system that we have so far?
Of growing returns involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When the model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures, but in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful, and the empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to...
We interrupt this program to kindly remind you that this man is a certified badass. I just have to say that. This is way better than I imagined. No wonder the internet's on fire over this speech. What a... this guy's my new favorite politician.
Life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of the sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society. Examples, ministries of women or international organizations devoted to promoting this agenda. Another conflict presented by socialists is that of humans against nature, claiming that
lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
We human beings damage the planet, which should...
I had no idea that he touched on the feminism thing as well. Oh, God. I have to give him an 11 out of 10 now.
Be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have taken a strong hold in our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately already started to go along this path. I know to many it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only...
No, it's not ridiculous at all. It's just there's two types of people when it comes to the political strife across the West in recent times. The people that can see what he's saying is true, and the people who are blind to it. That's it. It's like the blue pills and red pills in the Matrix, you know, as an analogy.
Limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals. With tools such as printing money, debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures, they can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where, by using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers in most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, or Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here.
Oh, he may be almost as great as Trump, if not greater. Let's see how it goes. It's only early days with this guy. I can't imagine the policies, like the seismic shifts that are going to happen in Argentina. Incredible. I'm going to be watching him very closely, as I'm sure millions of others will.
Today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And the impoverishment produced by collectivism is no fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this. We have been through this, because as I said earlier, ever since we...
You know, it just hit me just now, out of the blue. Peterson is John Peterson. He's right. Peterson is right when he said, I mean, I don't know, maybe I was 90% on board with it until literally half a minute ago, now that it just hit me, with this whole idea of his where he says, well, their main motivation is the hatred of the successful. They don't care about the downtrodden. They're not truthfully interested in helping those below them. It's more so that they're envious and they harbor hatred and jealousy for those above them, and thus that's why they want to smash the patriarchy and smash the not the patriarchy, that's feminism. I'm talking about the Marxists now. Smash capitalism and so on. The bourgeoisie. So I believe it now. It just hit me like a lightning bolt. Okay, it is, because I was trying to figure out earlier on, how the fuck do they not see what he's saying is 100% fact? Okay, how is not the entire, okay, let me rephrase it another way. How is it that candidates like him do not always, across all cultures, all historical periods, all countries, all the time, everywhere, all the time, constantly, get 100% of the vote? How the hell is that possible? I just figured it out a couple of minutes ago. Because there's always a percentage of the people that are at the bottom of the pyramid, of the success pyramid, which of course translates to the economic pyramid as well, because competence equates to wealth and status, right? That's the number one predictor of your success. Of your competence is the number one predictor for success in life, right? So the people that are at the bottom simply want to tear down the ones at the top, and they hate them. So even though their logic might, to begin with, like on the surface, like when they see something like this, or when they have a conversation with someone, or like me, like I had that conversation with that friend recently who was saying I'm a communist, and when I challenged her, she was like, well, capitalism has killed more people, and I was stunned at that. They seem to understand the arguments on a logical and a surface level, but then they revert to their visceral, deep hatred of the successful. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Yeah, wow. I was not 100% on board with Peterson on that one, but now I am. This is like another hallelujah moment. It's like, all right, I won't play the clip again, but let's go back to Mr. Chainsaw politician here.
We decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich. We have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina...
Because the scum, because that's what they are, the scum that espouse these ideologies and that get involved in these movements that wish to tear down all hierarchies, etc. They just, because of that hatred they have for success and for the successful, but for success in general, in all its forms, they hate success and beauty. Have you noticed that? They hate beauty as well. They just like to tear down beautiful things. I mean, the postmodern art, or the architecture in the past several decades in the West, it's so lifeless, so vapid, isn't it? It's so devoid of creativity and beauty, isn't it? So it's a whole package, all these ideologies, this postmodern, this neo-Marxist thing. Every day that goes by, you realize, one realizes how truly correct people like Jordan Peterson are. So they're so invested in that hatred of the beautiful and of success and of competence, that this downward spiral that he just mentioned a minute ago, they see it, they go down in it, they're getting pulled down in the quicksand, but they don't care, because they're so low on the scale, like let's say on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, however you want to put it, that the best thing they can do is drag everyone down with them. It's like the crabs in the bucket phenomenon. All right, so this explains why there is always a certain percentage of any given population in any era or any country that has these leftist communist views and clings to them for dear life. No matter how many facts you can get like a giant book of facts and just hit them across the head with it, and they still won't get it. Yeah, it's because they hate success.
Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be or how much you may have in terms of natural resources or how skilled your population may be or educated or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank, if measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty.
Yes.
Therefore,
yes, because if you hinder all those things, it stagnates, okay, and everything comes to a standstill.
Including, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors, you're heroes, you're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
He deserves one more Brian Blessed laugh. Go on. That was absolutely amazing. That was amazing. I need to watch that again. I've been saying this ever since Trump started his whole thing, like in late 2015, when he started, when he initially announced his run, etc. I've always been saying since back then that guy is like a template, Donald Trump, a template for a new era, a new kind of politician that will be by the people, for the people, that type of thing. Okay. People were slow to accept that, to believe that, but look at it now, almost a decade later. I mean, whatever happens in America, those we call the cabal know this to be a fact, metaphysically true, that whatever happens in America's like a beacon, an energetic beacon. Whatever happens there, in anything, but particularly in politics, I'm talking now, it's like it creates an energetic template for what's going to follow in the rest of the world. First in the Western world, Europe, Anglosphere, etc., and then it catches on everywhere, like literally all the world, Japan, India, China, everywhere, right? So we're seeing it happen now.